Jazz age living, whole fashion sipping, pizzazz ain't missing, got the fat cats kissing.
Sean's got the darkness and the memory.
Yeah.
Let me just, this kind of like went past this, but you know what Machiavellianism is?
No, I don't.
It's
know.
A reference to
I
the
kind
prince
of do,
and
but
the
I-
ends justifying the means.
No, it's like a kind of a person that's deceptive, but they're like deceptive over the long run, so that the outcome comes in their favor.
Yeah, it's like very subtle.
It's subtle, and I wouldn't say it's bad, but I mean, like Sean's got a little.
Yeah,
bit
he's
of
a little
that.
bit of Machiavellian.
bit of
Yeah, I can see it. That's in 48 Laws of Power, so he definitely read
got a little
about
bit.
it.
But if you want to be successful, obviously you got to be like self-controlled and like
Yes.
a little bit self-serving over a period of time to become successful. I mean, it's not like a bad
you can't
thing.
get too high or too low.
A lot of good examples of it.
And you can never make enemies. And you got to let the people who have less power think they have more power. I know all of the tricks, Sean. Okay.
No,
You're
Sean-
not-
Read 48 Laws of Power.
Sean's got a good heart.
It's also in How to Win Friends and Influence People. Another good book.
Excellent.
Still
book.
relevant.
Well, you guys know who Jordan Peterson is.
Sure do.
Right-wing, evil person.
Evil.
I'm just kidding. But his, I don't even know where I was going with this.
Well, we were talking about
That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
His point is that, like, in some cases, the ethical person has to be like a dangerous person. Like, you can't be a pushover. Sometimes you got to be the dangerous person to be capable of it.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, like, maybe this is bad in certain situations, but in other situations, it's a good thing.
Is that what you're doing?
I'll let you know when I get there.
No, I mean,
When I write the memoirs.
But we all know people that are pushovers, and they're not gonna do the right
Yeah.
thing when push comes to shove. That's the point.
yeah.
We're
that's
just
the
gonna
difference.
go with the flow and let bad things happen.
Yeah, there's a very fine line. And yeah, sometimes you can't. Yeah,
Is this a good time to touch on what is postmodernism
No.
like?
yeah. Dirty Mike knows a lot about postmodernism.
I do
and
not
by the
know.
way, while I was watching football and the Gators losing and the Bears, 6-7, I was starting to lose kind of hope in all of the standards of life, really, and
Because of
all of the eternal truths that they tell you about.
If you will.
Yeah.
Are you trying to prod me into a conversation here?
Show them the documents.
I'm trying to prod you
Show 'em
into
the-
some
show 'em the
postmodernism
documents.
talk.
My
dude.
MO is to buy a bunch of books and then get maybe like 10% into it and then think I understand it. If you
But
know,
I always put
look
the
at this.
bookmarks at the end.
This is deep into. This is the beginning.
This is deep. He's through the intro. He's through the forward.
Anyways, we talked about Manti Te'o and that whole media thing.
Yeah.
And like, do you guys think the media is honest?
No,
No.
absolutely not.
Do you?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Well, maybe on certain subjects, like boring ones, like when you get into like the Wall Street Journal, like business section. It's like,
Absolutely.
why do you got to lie about like what someone bought?
Like and subscribe.
Yeah. Why do you got to lie about like a company buying out someone?
Yeah.
It's like those are probably true, but anything that's on the front page, it's probably. It's true to an extent, but you got to spin it to have a little pizzazz. I'm in advertising.
So
I
let's
know
like
how they
connect this a little bit to sports, right? You remember at the beginning of the season when of this NFL season when the Patriots weren't doing too hot and then Brady was killing it for a couple weeks,
Yeah.
and then like the media was like,
Go Bucks.
They're like, oh my goodness, Tom Brady's the best person ever, and now it's kind of flipped a little bit the opposite direction. So it's like, what is the truth here? And it really doesn't matter to them. They just kind of like spin it the way they want it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, they desperately probably want Tom Brady to be awesome. So when he does anything kind of good, well, that's for all quarterbacks, though. It's like they get the lion's share of the credit, even though they probably shouldn't. I mean, when the Bears are doing well, it's not like Mitch was like amazing, but when the Bears are doing well and we're making the playoffs, it was like, hey, we got our quarterback, We got our future quarterback.
got
He's
our guy.
going to the Pro Bowl.
We got our guy.
He went to the Pro Bowl. You remember that?
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. I think that was the worst thing that could have happened to him because then it's like, oh, I am, I'm good.
So I guess the question here I would ask is the difference here was time. So is truth eternal or is truth temporal?
That's a good point. I don't know. That's a good point. Well, science, for example, is always evolving.
Mm-hmm.
And
As a scientist, you would be able to comment on this further.
as a scientist, I can comment on this. Let me tell you this. At the highest level, so I was studying like a type of cell in the eye called microglia. And during
Let him
going
go.
out there,
Let him run
just
with
going
it.
at, like,
No. I'm just saying you kind of just revealed the.
well, they don't know a ton of stuff, but let's just say I was studying this cell called microglia, and there's like an argument about whether they contribute to retinal damage or help protect the retina. So there's like two different diametrically opposed things that they were thinking it could do.
And Mike, before you continue, which disease processes might our viewers have heard about that this would relate to?
This is
like macular degeneration. What would this connect to?
This is retinitis pigmentosa. You probably haven't heard about this, but it's a genetic disease that causes death of the cells in your eye that detect light.
Got it.
And
So
then-
what would that like?
So blindness.
It's blindness, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it causes blindness.
Okay.
I thought everything was
You know,
just-
eyes, sound.
So at the highest
I
level,
didn't know whether like everything was just like a shadow at that point. Okay.
So at the highest level, you have these like two opposite effects of this cell type during this process: helpful and then damaging. And then these cells are either in the retina from birth, and we call those usually microglia. And then sometimes when you get an injury, then you have inflammation, then you have the immune system come into the site of injury. Now there's a cell that's very similar to this, but a little bit different, called macrophage. And even at the highest level, they can't decide what to call these two things. Sometimes they say microglia and they mean both of these things. Sometimes they say microglia, they only mean microglia. But my point is, at the highest level of science, there is no absolute truth, and they can't even like pick a word to describe things.
Wow.
So it's like really inconsistent. But then you think about how at the highest level this is like inconsistent. Then you got the media trying to tell people
Filter it.
Yeah. What
something.
is correct?
It's just so confusing.
It's
so confusing.
So I
So
just,
would you call yourself a postmodernist?
That's the scary thing about I think
Here he goes. Go off, King.
Wait, what are you gonna say? Let him collect his thoughts.
I'll buy Mike some time. So this is a great example of this. So I take some business classes at night. I recently took a class called Business Statistics, and we had some really interesting exploration of correlation, causation. What can we connect just from data, and how do we derive truth from that? And the spurious correlations you can find in data is Judaism is linked to eating tomatoes, for example, or
Basically, you can
people
make
falling down-
whatever your end goal is. You can probably morph it.
You can
into.
find it, and Mike can certainly speak to this more than I can. But ideas like p-hacking, spurious correlation, you can really design ways. So a good example of this is women who are pregnant. There was a very, very focused study about whether or not eating chocolate influences adverse birth outcomes for these women, and the answer was no correlation. So by the time this reached mainstream media, it was eating chocolate could be helpful for your baby. And this was all over Fox News, headline news, at these studies, it's
paid by Nestle.
Yeah. Sponsored by Nestle.
Yeah.
So just like what you get out of this data is just so skewed and so spinned around by the time the media tries to filter it down, deliver it to us in a digestible form.
Well, I mean, you can make whatever news you want. I mean, if a big company wants, it's a PR. I mean, we need to get Erica, Travis's wife.
Only woman he's ever loved.
Whoa. We need to get her on the podcast because she could definitely
That'd
explain
be
the PR angle
That'd be
and
great.
how big companies come to you, and then you just, all right, whatever the story is that you want to get out, we'll figure a way to get it into a newspaper.
Oh yeah, it'd be easy.
Mike, you ready for your follow-up?
My
Are you a
follow-up-
postmodernist?
Are you
So
a
let's just say
postmodernist?
the point is like, what is truth? And there's like obviously a debate about what truth is based on what we just said.
Mhm.
And at one point in the past, I guess
Let me just touch on that real quick. So basically, the Bears could be good or they could be bad. It's
It's just how
really
you
there's
spin
no absolute truth.
and
right?
you could pick whatever statistic you want to support your argument.
Yeah,
Whatever you want.
and they do it all the time. And then we're gonna let you run. They do it all the time. I mean, with Mitch, they do it. They're like, oh well, actually, has a higher percentage of completions during weeks 3 through 8 than Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. So now what?
How many new types of statistics in football are added? Or like baseball is a really good example.
Baseball's
Baseball's
great.
ridiculous.
Baseball is ridiculous. I mean, you could take whatever. I mean, there's so many different ways to look at it that it's like whatever you want the end goal to be, you can find a way to kind of morph it.
My sister's really into this, and she's done some reading of Nate Silver, big statistician, 5830.
Nate Silver.
538.
Nate Silver, did I say that right? Statistician, and I think helped design the Picada system that the Oakland A's used for Moneyball, basically, or the spinoff of there. And to your point, like when the moon is in a waxing gibbon in October, this pitcher has an ERA of 1.2.
But were they? I don't think they were doing that.
That's not what they were doing
Yeah.
in that. But to Mike's point, just like what you can do with statistics is just so insane.
Nate Silver was one of the pollsters for the election this year.
Really?
He was one. Didn't he do the previous one too?
Probably, yeah.
He did Obama's.
But no, he did the one with
And he did Trump. And he got it
and
wrong.
Hillary, and he got it
He
wrong.
was wrong.
I mean, they're all wrong this time too.
So
I
what's
mean,
truth?
anyways, yeah, exactly. What's
Yeah.
truth?
Was Trump even our president?
So
Is Biden?
don't get me into this.
Don't prompt me.
Whoa!
I would say that.
I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving.
Yeah, I would just say that Trump's probably not. It's not 0%, but it's not a big percent either. But, anyways, like at one point in the past, it was like religion and faith that was what truth was.
Yeah.
You know, we still have elements of that today. And then, kind of during the boom of science, it was reason and the scientific method and things like that that became truth. And then there's issues with that too. And then nowadays, it's more like what feels correct, what makes the most people feel emotionally secure or something like that. That's truth. So it's like keeps on ebbing and flowing through time.
That's my problem with like, I talk to my family members and stuff. It's like, you don't know any of this is true. Like I'm on both, like, I'm talking about politics, but like both sides of the spectrum. Luckily, I live in a family that's all over the place. So it's like the way you hear them talking, it's like I always question everything. Like I will never take in information and be like, oh, okay, I'm going to go start like, telling people that's
Parade
the
around
truth.
and
It's
say
like,
that.
no, like, and that's like the problem, like to actually find your truth, I guess is what you would say it, what you kind of agree with or whatever it is. That takes months of like research and actual like digging into,
Deep
thought and thinking, all right, I agree with these principles. And in this specific instance, I would agree with whatever the outcome is. But like just to like completely like read something one time, even if it's a full article, you read the full article. It's like, no, now this is what I believe. It's like, well, you don't know who wrote that. You don't know what the angle is. You don't know basically anything about it other than the last 10 minutes.
You read it.
So you should, there should always be a constant questioning. That's why I don't like hardcore, like, let's keep it in politics, hardcore, like Trump trained people. And I don't like hardcore libs.
Populist.
It's like, you got to have some like, wait a second, what he said right there, that was completely ridiculous. And I don't agree with that. And then on the other side, it's like, like some things that AOC says are completely ridiculous. So it's like, everyone has slices of themselves that are good. There's no overall, this is bad, that's bad. It's just keep questioning.
No absolutes.
And but is that postmodernism?
The scary thing about postmodernism is like, I guess, I'm not like...
You're an expert.
I just started... I'm not an expert. And I tell you, it's very difficult to keep all this complicated stuff in your mind when you're like working 8 hours a day, like for 5 to 6 days a week. So I'd say, I think there's elements of postmodernism where it's correct. And then there's parts of it where if you're a Machiavellian in person, that you could take advantage of it. Not you, but just politicians. Like the fact that emotions are the truth, or that each of us have our own subjective truth, that you could take advantage of that kind of like line of thinking. And I think we've seen that played out this year big time.
Sure.
So in reflection of 2020, let's just talk about maybe politics really quickly. Who are
another mango?
I got a little splash.
Here,
Okay.
read this.
That's all I got.
Sean just poured literally
That's all I
3
got left.
drops.
What do you got there, Mike?
Read
What do you
this
got there
page
for us?
on the left side.
So while Adam's reading through that, Mike, speaking of politics, your big winners and losers of 2020. Who is the big winner for you in politics 2020?
Big winner?
Yeah, it's the end of the year
Oh,
here. Who's the big winner?
The establishment. It's going to be a weird year next year. The thing is, I think as you look at like Biden's cabinet picks, I think it's just a rehash of the Bush Obama era, and then they've kind of like pushed the progressive agenda to the side.
I agree.
And like for example, Bernie's not in it. Warren's not part of it. John Kerry comes out of the woodwork to be the environmentalism person.
I missed that. Is he really?
Something like that. It's just like the establishment is coming back. And progressivism is getting pushed to the side. But the interesting thing about this year is like the censorship and like people trying to,
All that.
show you what the truth is, quote unquote.
Burden of proof is on the critics.
Yeah. And then I think 2021, what they'll see is that the progressives and whatever the MAGA / American First movement have in common is free speech. And it's going to be interesting to see if those two parties can kind of like get together, because it's going to be like a libertarian / progressive combination. I want to see how that plays out.
Yeah, that'll be interesting for sure.
Adam, your big winners in politics this year?
I don't know, man. I really stopped like keeping up with it just because it was so like.
It doesn't make any sense. That's why.
Yeah, yeah. To me, it's just like I don't. Whatever, whatever happens, I don't know. It's a coronavirus year. Like things are so weird. I was just like, whatever. I don't care. I really don't.
I have a biggest loser in politics, and I think a lot of people would probably echo this. Rudy.
Yeah,
rough end of the year for Rudy.
that is the biggest loser for sure.
Tooting during a deposition.
Did he really fart?
Yeah,
Yeah,
It was real?
He
Yes.
flatulated, like picked up by the microphone, and the I don't know if it was an aide, an attaché, who it was. There's this woman next to him, just Stonewall Jackson, just kind of a little quick side eye and was like, "All right, this is where I am."
And
This
he's
is where
like,
I
his
am in
hair
life."
dye's dripping
His
off
hair
his
dye's
head,
dripping.
and he's holding press conferences in some sort of like landscaping parking lot. It's just
with like
not,
a crematorium
it's
behind
not
him.
a good look.
He was
dude.
on Borat too.
He was on Borat too. Oh man, that guy really
That's my
makes
political
me
loser of the
sick.
year, unfortunately. Poor guy. You
Borat?
hate to go out that
Oh,
way.
no, not Borat, Rudy. He used to be the most popular person in New York too. Remember like 9/11 times? He was
Huge
like at the
turnaround.
Yankees game. Everyone's like, yeah. Now he's leaking everywhere from
Leaking hair dye,
everywhere.
face gel, or whatever he's got on himself.
Yeah. What was that?
I don't know.
Can I borrow this when you're done?
New
I
York.
didn't get to that whole book, but
When you're done.
you can use it.
New
yeah.
York is in some.
I think you can
problems.
borrow it now because I'm
Hey,
onto
speaking
something.
of New York, did you know that Andrew Cuomo was just banned from all restaurants for the rest of time in New
Why?
York?
Are you serious?
All of the small business or whatever association with restaurants came out and said,
Lifetime.
"We
ban.
will never serve you ever again."
Really?
Dude, what's going to happen to the Chicago restaurants? Like, it's only
A
outdoor.
lot of closures. A lot of closures.
closures.
We were just at
Over
Hobson's
100,000.
the 2 weeks ago, or was that last week?
Worldwide. Last weekend.
Yeah.
Last weekend.
You know, you're allowed to eat outside as long as it's inside,
As long as it's
outside
not-
of the inside.
Right. We're gonna
It all makes sense.
we're gonna put up a physical structure, wrap it in plexiglass and cellophane, call it outdoors, and
Watch the bears
surely
here.
air particulate can't,
Makes sense.
makes
Yeah.
sense.
You can't eat inside, only inside outside.
Yeah.
Hello, it's pretty simple.
There's nothing more true than that, man.
Hey, that's the most true thing I've heard all day.